Project Rebirth. Before Tony made a super suit of armor or Thor's exile, the very first attempt at superpowers began with Project Rebirth. Chronologically, this project began in 1943, making it quite literally the first event. It was basically a top-secret research operation by the US. The goal was to produce an experimental substance known as the Super Soldier Serum, created by lead scientist Dr. Abraham Erskine. This serum and what it did to Steve Rogers was something that several scientists, governments, and groups tried to recreate for decades, because it was just that big of a deal. The result was a literal super soldier, someone who doesn't fall sick to disease and is constantly at the peak of human potential. Everybody wanted it for themselves: Hydra, the Soviets, and even rebel groups like the Flag Smashers. Steve was a once-in-a-century miracle. The idea behind the project was too efficient. You could take a normal soldier and give him superpowers, all because of one injection. That's just not something any self-respecting military would pass up. While Project Rebirth itself ended after Steve was transformed, attempts at creating super soldiers kept going. Many soldiers died during these experiments, and many more were permanently damaged. Bucky, for one, went through hell with Hydra, all because of his status as the Winter Soldier. And, well, they're Nazis. Sanity was never really their thing. But Hydra isn't the only one. Even the US ordered crazy experiments in order to recreate the serum, and when it didn't work, they'd never even acknowledge the people they ran tests on.
A couple of the boys get captured on a mission. I heard the brass talking about blowing the POW camp to hell to hide the evidence.
Out of all of that, we got superpowered people like the Hulk, the Abomination, as well as superheroes like Red Guardian and John Walker. Not sure I'd call that last one a hero, but hey, everyone can change. Serum or no serum, Project Rebirth changed the MCU because it introduced superpowers, but definitely not the last. I am Iron Man. While Erskine's work was massive, it was top secret, which is the opposite of what Tony Stark's reveal was. This guy made a super suit of armor so advanced that no other nation could replicate the technology, started being a full-time superhero, and then publicly revealed his double life to the entire world.
The truth is, I am Iron Man.
You gotta hand it to him. The man can put on a show. This might seem like a small event, because it's just a press conference, but it was major for a couple of reasons. It was the first time superheroes were being publicly acknowledged. That was massive because so far, it was like the elephant in the room nobody wanted to address. The second reason is that after this, governments eventually started pressing for regulation on superheroes, something that eventually became a massive plot point in Civil War.
And what word would you use, Mr. Secretary?
How about dangerous?
Tony's reveal also set the stage for the MCU really early. Since superheroes became a public thing from literally the first Iron Man movie, the MCU didn't have to keep the plot hidden from the wider world. In fact, a big part of Phase 2 was exploring how the world is reacting to superpowers, heroes, and advanced technology. Battle of New York. If there's one moment where the MCU truly changes overnight, it's the Battle of New York in the Avengers. But this battle literally shifted the world's perspective on superheroes, as well as the cost that comes with them in one day. The conflict begins when Loki arrives on Earth, uses the Tesseract to open a massive portal in the sky above Manhattan, and unleashes the Chitauri, an alien army sent to conquer the planet. Now, within literally minutes, New York becomes a full-on war zone. This is also the moment when Earth's heroes truly come together for the first time. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye unite as the Avengers to defend the city and ultimately repel the invasion. But after it's all said and done, the world can't ignore the truth anymore. Superpowers are real. People turn into green giants. A blonde god in medieval armor can fling lightning. A billionaire is flying around as a one-man army. Also, aliens. Yeah, aliens are a thing, and so is alien technology. The battle leaves a psychological scar on our heroes too. Tony becomes obsessed with protecting the Earth from potential future space invasions, and he starts having nightmares about all of it. Now, eventually, This leads to him making Ultron, and you guys know the story. A robot's too advanced for its own good. The robot goes bad. The robot tries to kill all of humanity. We've been here before.
You're stalling to protect the people.
Well, that is the mission. Did you forget?
I've moved beyond your mission. I'm free.
Thing is, Ultron almost succeeded in doing that, and after the Battle of New York, governments were already on edge about the Avengers. But after New York and Ultron, they pretty much decided that these guys, as helpful as they were, are also far too dangerous to go unregulated, which leads us to the Sokovia Accords. So far, the Avengers have been running solo. I'm not even sure if there's a way to contact them outside of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. They respond whenever they want to, and they don't answer to anybody, really. The question the Sokovia Accords ask is pretty reasonable. Who's responsible for these guys? Seriously, one of them turns into a raging berserker, and another is an actual god. In Captain America Civil War, we see a global political crisis. The Accords were a set of international laws created to regulate super-powered individuals. They were created and signed by 117 countries in total, which is massively bad for the Avengers.
The Sokovia Accords, approved by 117 countries, it states that the Avengers shall no longer be a private organization.
Under the Accords, the Avengers would be the property of the United Nations and would need government approval before they could act. Which sure, in hindsight, it makes sense, except that also makes them really limited and essentially just government lapdogs, which is something that Steve realized.
Protection. Is that how you see this? This is protection? It's internment.
She's
Tony.
not a U.S. citizen and they
She's
don't
a kid.
Give me a break!
But at the same time, you can't deny that it's absolutely insane that these people get to walk free, which is something Tony acknowledges.
He wanted to make a difference, I suppose. I mean, we won't know because we dropped the building on him while we were kicking ass.
This scene is about the death of Charles Spencer, a brilliant engineer working on sustainable housing. Unfortunately, he could never see his plans through since, well, you heard it from Tony.
There's no decision-making process here. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game. If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
He makes his stance on the Accords extremely clear after this. This disagreement right here is the plot of Civil War and the eventual internal friction between the Avengers. To many governments, the Avengers had become an unregulated military force with the power to reshape entire cities. But let's say New York happened while the Accords were a thing. In the time it would have taken to get government approval, Loki would have probably conquered New York. What began as a political disagreement eventually led to the Avengers fracturing from within, and superheroes in general becoming a global controversy. Fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. As if everything we just went over wasn't enough, the Avengers also lost their only support network. Apparently, it turns out, Nazis had infiltrated and overtaken S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, this is major for more than a few reasons. S.H.I.E.L.D. pretty much held everything together. They monitored global threats, managed advanced technology, and coordinated with the Avengers. Nick Fury's warning to Tony about the nuke was how he even managed to save New York from being a radiation site.
Stark, you hear me? You have a missile headed straight for the city.
How long?
3 minutes, max.
In Captain America, the Winter Soldier, we see the whole conspiracy. By the 2000s, Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. at the highest levels of leadership. One of its most powerful agents was Alexander Pierce. This guy was the secretary of the World Security Council, and he was secretly raising Hydra inside S.H.I.E.L.D. They planned to make use of all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s resources, especially since they had more funding than ever after the Battle of New York. The government wanted S.H.I.E.L.D. prepared in case something like the Chitaris happened again. With all this funding, S.H.I.E.L.D. made Project Insight, which was basically a security network with 3 heavily armed helicarriers that would bomb any threat to atoms before it could get out of hand. However, Hydra wanted to use these helicarriers to kill anyone who would oppose them, and that number is in the billions. Thing is, the crew on all 3 of these flying arsenals was almost entirely undercover Hydra agents, so they were actually in a position to live their Nazi dreams. Luckily, they were stopped by Captain America, but the damage to S.H.I.E.L.D. was something it never really recovered from. After this, it lost essential trust and it was effectively dissolved. Wakanda reveals itself. While S.H.I.E.L.D. lost all of its goodwill, Wakanda gained a lot of it when it revealed itself to the world. And this basically changed Earth's potential for technology. Wakanda's pretty much got a monopoly on technological advancement and vibranium, but it's always stayed hidden. Earth is considered a pretty low-level planet in terms of advancement in the broader universe. But that's also because Wakanda's never shared its technology with the rest of the world, until T'Challa revealed Wakanda's existence in front of the entire UN.
We will be sharing our knowledge and resources with the outside world. Wakanda will no longer watch from the shadows.
T'Challa decided to, for the first time in the country's history, open its vibranium-based technology to the world. He even set up the Wakandan International Outreach Center in Oakland, with plans to establish relations between Wakanda and the rest of the world.
This will be the first Wakandan International Outreach Center.
This basically meant that Earth wasn't behind every other planet in terms of technology anymore. Not just because they openly had Wakanda now, but because through Wakanda, the rest of the planet would have probably advanced rapidly, but then the snap happened. The Infinity War? Honestly, this one's pretty straightforward. The Infinity Stones were the major plot device throughout phases 1 to 3, but they were always in the background, scattered throughout the universe. Each one had shown up in different places. The Tesseract, Loki's scepter, the Ether, the Orb from Xandar, the Eye of Agamotto, and the Soul Stone hidden away on Vormir. But in Infinity War, they were all brought together when Thanos collected every single one. Pretty brutally, too. Let's break down his record, which also heavily changed the MCU. He destroyed Xandar for the Power Stone, so no Nova Corps is keeping the peace. He attacked the surviving Asgardians and killed Loki to take the Space Stone. He beat down every Avenger on 2 planets for the Time and Mind Stones. Did I mention that before that? He literally killed his own daughter for the Soul Stone. And he also potentially destroyed Nowhere for the Reality Stone. He might even have tortured the Collector. I say maybe because what he showed the Guardians was an illusion by the Reality Stone, so we aren't sure what really happened with the Collector. Also, because he's paranoid about losing power, he killed every dwarf in Nidavellir besides Atri after he made them forge the Infinity Gauntlet. Those guys made some of the best weapons in the entire universe, including Mjolnir. Still, all of that is nothing compared to what he does once he has all the stones. The Snap. This is the single biggest event in the entire MCU. In maybe 2 seconds, max, Thanos wiped out 50% of all life in the universe. That's trillions of living beings that were turned to dust. Entire civilizations, planets, and ecosystems are immediately gone. We covered this in our Why Technology Hasn't Changed Much in the MCU video, but the snap is also a big reason the Earth hasn't advanced, despite how rapidly technology has escalated in the Marvel Universe. The snap was the single worst thing in the history of, well, forever. If the Avengers hadn't have been around, it would be something that would take the universe decades or even centuries to recover from. There wasn't any sort of reasoning to it either. It just randomly killed half of everything. Entire governments and populations vanished in seconds. We see the universe reeling from it in the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame. Also, as if all of this wasn't enough, Thanos used the power of the stones to destroy the stones.
Reduced to atoms.
You used them 2 days ago.
He used the stones to destroy the stones.
Yep, he made sure that there was no way to reverse what he had done. No one in the MCU has ever come close to something like this. Time travel discovered. After the snap, the world spends 5 years trying to survive in a completely broken state, and the Avengers can't do a single thing about it except brainstorm. And, ironically enough, that's all they needed. It starts with Scott Lang returning from the quantum realm. Because time works differently there, what felt like 5 hours for him was actually 5 years in the real world. Tony and Bruce get inspired by this and decide to explore the idea of time travel. Tony eventually cracks the problem by developing a device that can safely navigate the quantum realm and pinpoint specific moments in the past. For the first time in MCU history, controlled time travel through alternate timelines becomes possible. This leads to the time heist, where the Avengers travel back to different points in their own history to retrieve the Infinity Stones before Thanos ever collects them. They revisit moments like the Battle of New York in 2012 and the military base where the Tesseract was stored in the 1970s, where Tony also met his dad. But the discovery of time travel also meant new timelines. Now, the Avengers also planned for this because Steve returned each stone to the exact point in time it had been taken. But the concept would still become the foundation for the MCU's next era, especially in Loki. The Blip. The first thing the Avengers do with the Infinity Stones is undo the snap, and this was really awkward. Imagine randomly disappearing and coming back to life 5 years later. Billions of people started appearing out of nowhere, and while it restored half the universe, it also created enormous chaos on Earth. But restoring half the population overnight creates enormous complications. Entire communities now have to reintegrate millions of people who legally and socially no longer had a place in the world. Governments struggle to redistribute housing, jobs, and resources, and many people return to find that their homes or livelihoods no longer belong to them. The Blip also is what lets the Avengers win against Thanos in the final battle, since everyone who died came back at once to fight Thanos' army. While they did undo the damage by reviving everyone, the actual societal impact of the Blip is probably something we're going to hear about forever. Emergence of Tiamut. One of Marvel's biggest twists came from the Eternals, and it redefined what Earth was. I mean, yeah, superpowers are one thing, but apparently the Earth and many planets before it have been used as farms for cosmic beings known as Celestials. This is a process they call the Emergence. These ancient entities are responsible for shaping entire galaxies, and they make babies in a really weird way.
It is time for you to learn the true purpose of your mission. You were sent to Earth to bring forth the celestial Tiamut.
They cultivate intelligent life on a planet first, guiding the species and even helping it evolve. And then, once the world can generate enough energy, they use the planet to serve as the fuel for a new celestial to be born. And when one is born, it emerges from the core of the planet. So in this case, Earth would be the egg, and the celestial inside of it, Tiamut, is the chicken. This twist also changed the entire role of the Eternals. For thousands of years, they believed their role was simply to protect humanity from the deviants and help civilization develop. In reality, they fattened the planet up so it could be grade A baby food. By the time the events of the Eternals unfold, that birth has already started. Tiamut begins pushing out from beneath the planet's surface, with parts of its enormous body breaking through the ocean. If the process finished, Earth itself would have been destroyed. While the Eternals do stop it, you have to wonder just how much people were aware about what was happening. I mean, they literally saw Arishem spawn next to Earth. Plus, you're telling me no one's going to talk about how Tiamut's corpse is just sticking out of the ocean? Granted, this is all post-Blip, so what's another alien? The multiverse breaks. The biggest event after the snap and blip is definitely everything that went down with the TVA. See, for almost all of the MCU, we've had a pretty constant understanding of how time works in the multiverse. Endgame changed that a bit with the time heist, but Loki completely threw out the whole rulebook when it introduced the TVA, He Who Remains, the Sacred Timeline, and that Season 2 ending. The TVA exists outside of normal time and space, and its job is to monitor the sacred timeline, the single version of reality that's allowed to exist. Whenever someone's actions create a branching timeline, otherwise known as a nexus event, it's the TVA's job to reset things and ensure that branch or variant gets pruned.
Prune him.
And since forever, things have worked this way. Until Sylvie killed He Who Remains, the only thing keeping the timelines together. With that safety net gone, the multiverse pretty much lost its entire safety net, and the effects were immediate. Just a couple of seconds after his death, the timeline started going crazy. Every single branch in that? That's a whole new world. There could be a world where Tony works at Wendy's out there. Multiverse of Madness gave us a look into just how big the multiverse really is. No Way Home showed us what it looks like when realities start crossing over. But the full effects are probably going to be a lot worse. Also, did you guys catch Rhino in the cracks? That was insane. I'm pretty sure that's Rhino, Who else is 7 feet tall with a horn on their head? Even though Loki is holding down the fort, or tree, quite literally, the system has changed completely, and no one really knows what's next. This was a really hard list to make, because there's honestly so many small and big events that shaped the MCU into what it is today. But these were the ones that had the most impact in my opinion. What do you guys think? Is there anything you'd add to this list? Or is there anything you'd take off? Share your theories and thoughts, especially about what the events of Loki Season 2 might mean for Doomsday.